Is it working? It is! All right. Let me know in a comment if you can see me and hear me okay. And if you hear weird noises, it's because Matt behind me snoring. So, yeah. That's what that noise is. And somebody's calling. Hello. No, I'm live right now. No, I'm live right now. Do you want them to? Okay, go check the page again. There's a different link. Okay, bye. That was my brother. Hello. Hi. Okay, so it is Thursday. So obviously it's going to be about Turner syndrome. And this is kind of wrapping up Turner Syndrome Awareness Month because it is March 1st. Yesterday was the last day of Turner Syndrome Awareness Month. And yeah, so I thought to end Turner Syndrome Awareness Month this year, since I was focusing on awareness and talked about sharing our stories and all of that, I thought I could again tell my story because I haven't told it in a while, not very in-depthly. And there have been a lot of people that have subscribed since the last time I told it that probably have not heard that story. So I thought I would tell my story. And if you guys want to share yours in the comments, absolutely feel free to. So I was diagnosed. Andrew's messing with the lights. If you see, it's like a disco in here. Yeah. So I was diagnosed while my mom was still pregnant with me. What happened with me was they went in for the 20-week ultrasound 19 or 20 weeks. It was around that they went in for the ultrasound that they do the anatomy scan. Back then, they didn't do ultrasounds all the time like they do now. So they went in for the anatomy scan and they found out I was a girl. They were very, very excited because I have 3 older brothers, so they were very excited to finally be getting a girl. Andrew, Brad says the reddish orange light matches best. Anyways, so they found out I was a girl. They're distracting me now. And then in the same ultrasound, the X-ray tech, the technician doing the ultrasound, or not X-ray, the ultrasound technician, whoever was performing the ultrasound, got kind of quiet and was a little confused. So they said, okay, the go wait in the hallway and the doctor wants to see you. And my mom started getting really nervous because she knew that meant something was wrong. And then when they went in, they told them that there was fluid in the back of my neck and in my chest cavity surrounding all of my vital organs. And they said they didn't know what it was, but it could possibly be spina bifida. And that would mean my brain was seeping out of the back of my head and all of these really, really scary things that was all they had to go off of. They hadn't done any testing. They just saw the fluid. And without knowing that the fluid was just normal fluid and not my brains, they thought it could be spina bifida. And they needed to check. So They ended up doing an amniocentesis and finding out more. First, they sent them to a brain specialist where the doctor looked at my brain and goes, oh no, she has a beautiful brain. And for whatever it's worth, sure, that's beautiful. I was actually very glad. That's a very good thing, but my brain was fine. And then they did an amniocentesis. So that is when they found out it was Turner syndrome. And from the amniocentesis, they said that wasn't a guarantee, that I would still need to myself be tested, because an amniocentesis tests the fluid around the baby instead of the baby themselves. So they said it was Turner syndrome for sure, and most likely I was classic. But they did like 3D, 4D ultrasounds, and nothing but the fluid was wrong. I was given, because of the fluid, I was given a less than 1% chance of living. So point something % chance of living. And it was obviously very shocking. They had never heard of Turner syndrome before I was diagnosed. And so they didn't know where to start from. And thankfully, the pediatrician they had for me, well, for my brothers and then for me, remembered hearing about it, but didn't remember the details. So he read up on it. And then a lot of the doctors that they ended up switching to, because they switched, because the original doctors were not very good. They were very doomsday about it.
There it is.
He wanted to say hi.
Somebody told me to come let the cat in.
I know, because Sirius was at the door going crazy.
It is raining.
Real life, guys.
Come here.
So they were very doomsday at the original doctors. The original doctors that my mom was at. Are you hurting him?
No. Oh.
And she ended up switching, because the original doctor she was going to, or one of the doctors in the office, one of the two, or you two coming to join, ow, Max, that was in the office. I don't know if it was him she was seeing, or he worked in the office she went to, but every time she came in, he would say to her, I'm just surprised we found a heartbeat. And that's not encouraging at all. Not helpful, not encouraging. Not when you're already being told your baby is just, there's no chance. And that's just not necessary and not hopeful. And yeah. So they ended up switching doctors. And I think that happened after the ultrasound, like 2 months later, maybe a week and a half later. Yes, my brother's in the comments if you guys are wondering. Yeah, they pushed immediately. They pushed my parents to terminate. They said there was no chance, just terminate. She'll never make it. If you don't terminate now, we can't guarantee you won't have to deliver her dead, was what they were saying. They had this doomsday scenario where they even said if my lungs were able to develop enough for me to breathe, which they didn't think was likely with the fluid there, I would be basically a vegetable. Like I would have no quality of life. I wouldn't be able to talk, walk, feed myself, nothing. Even if for some miracle I was able to breathe, if my lungs did develop any to that point. They really thought the most likely scenario was my lungs wouldn't develop and I would go to take a breath and I would just pass away that way right after I was born. Either that or I wouldn't even make it to term. I wouldn't make it to a birth at all. And that was what they told them. And that was a lot of what most of what my parents was hearing for the first 2 months, something like that. And then they had an ultrasound. They pushed so hard that there was a scheduled termination. They really tried to push it. And then there was a mandatory last minute ultrasound. It wasn't even the most high definition they ended up doing. It was kind of a not great quality, but oh, here you go. We're going to check things to make sure nothing had changed. And they went to that ultrasound and everything had changed. They went from a lot of fluid in my chest cavity surrounding my heart and my lungs and in the back of my neck to, at that ultrasound, like probably 6 or 7 weeks later, there was no more fluid in my chest cavity and like 10% fluid left in the back of my neck of what had been there. Almost, it was gone. And they had no explanation for it. They said they had never seen it be so severe and just start working and reverse itself like that, because the problem with the fluid is the lymphatic system hooking up. So that is supposed to happen within a week of conception, and mine didn't do that till 26 weeks, something like that. When they had that ultrasound and it happened, I don't know when between the last one and that one, but I know she was having them. My mom was having ultrasounds pretty regularly because they were watching her really closely. So I know it wasn't super far between, but yeah. So let's look at comments. Max has become both of our dogs, but he started out as mine. I got him before we got married when I was living with my aunt. And then when we got married, it took me a year, but I had to try to get him here. So he started out as mine, and now he's very much both of ours. And he very much loves Andrew. He listens to Andrew so much better than he listens to me. Yeah, most doctors, they don't even try. And because of what happened with me, because of the shock of all of it reversing, there were medical journals written basically warning other doctors like, hey, don't jump so quickly to it. This is what happened in this scenario. Basically, like, stranger stuff has happened. Don't be so quick to push that. Listen if they're saying they want to wait. And my parents kind of gave them no choice with me because they saw the ultrasound and the x-ray, or the ultrasound tech or whatever she was just like, I can't appreciate that it's gone. My mom's like, what are you talking about? It's right there. You can't see it anymore. What more do you need? But that's their mindset with it. They're very, very, there's no use. There's no hope. And basically, God is bigger than that. So they ended up trying to warn other doctors not to do that with it. And yeah. Max is not just your dog. Oh my goodness. Yes, Kendra, it was scheduled from what I know. And it was like a day or two before it was supposed to happen that they had that. And then as soon as they got those results, my parents called it off and said, no, we're not doing it. We're going to wait and see what happens then. So they still spent the rest of the pregnancy being really nervous, and I was still very high risk, but nothing happened. Nothing changed. And they even did a 4D ultrasound after that and found every single one of my organs, and all of it was totally normal and totally fine. the only thing that they could really find was like the stretchy skin on my neck, and that was it. So, yeah. I know it disturbs me every time my mom talks about what they were saying, because I can't imagine going through that. And especially back then, when I don't think there was as much of a community for like other moms to talk about it. And it was just scary, and they didn't know as much. But yeah. So anyways, yes, Amazon Princess. I do love horses very, very much. And I really want one. Don't know where I'd put them, but I would love to have a horse. I at least want to go horseback riding really soon. I know I've heard so many stories from my mom of the doctors apologizing too, because they took me, my parents took me back to the doctors, and one of the doctors just cried and was so apologetic and so like, I'm so sorry I even suggested it. Like, because he could see there was nothing wrong, and it wouldn't have accomplished anything good to just have terminated it. So I hope that can be a lesson to others. And that's why I try to sell my story, because I think that's what those doctors would want. They wanted that message to get out. That's why they wrote those medical journals. And I don't know how many of the doctors lately are reading them, but yeah. We do all deserve a chance. My favorite movie, I don't know if I can name just one movie. Andrew, what movie do you think is my favorite movie? Comment it. Because I've seen so many, I don't even know. Tell the story about when we almost lost you. Are you meaning, when are you meaning, Bradley? Brad said Harry Potter is my favorite. Yeah, probably. Wouldn't be surprised. Kendra, I try to tell as many people as I can in the medical field that I come into contact with, because I don't think those are getting the medical journals. I don't think they're really doing as much work as those
honey.
Doctors that had written it.
Hey, honey.
Yes.
What jacket are you wearing right now? Yeah,
yeah. This, I didn't show you guys this. I've worn it.
And what coffee mug am I drinking out of?
Hey, that's yours, not mine.
You bought it for me.
Gryffindor. Oh yeah. Do you think the doctors think all the cells in a Turner's girl will be affected? No. Okay, now he's just showing proof of it. Are you trying to prove a point?
No.
No, I don't think they would think, not a girl that has it and is living. Because if all of your cells are affected, you wouldn't be able to survive. That's why they put such a bad omen to it, because it can be as serious as they say. It's just not predictable on their part by each case what's going to happen. So they can't say for sure that's going to happen. And what are you doing?
Just showing them all the random Harry Potter stuff.
He's now just bringing me all of my Harry Potter stuff that's around the house. So no, I don't think they'd ever say all the cells were affected, because if they were, you wouldn't survive. But the more cells that are, the harsher it's going to be, the more severely you're going to be affected. And they go for the doomsday and go for what that scenario would be like, instead of waiting and seeing or doing a bunch of tests and trying to understand better what that person's scenario is. So, yeah. When you were choking in the crib and mom and dad called 911. Oh, yeah, that's a fun story. So, when I was a baby, I don't think I was very old. I don't think I was even 6 months. My mom had me in the bassinet and she was dealing with laundry, and she heard me not breathing right, and they thought I was choking, or I was choking. I was not breathing. And so they had to call 911. My brothers were like shipped off to the neighbors next door. Bradley was kind of in charge of that. And they had to ride in the ambulance. I think my mom rode with me in the ambulance to the hospital. And then when they got there, I don't think they ever found out what happened, like why I just stopped breathing. But it was really funny because the nurse tried to say I was premature because I was 2 weeks early. And that's why I was having trouble breathing. And my mom's like, 2 weeks is not premature. They never found out why, but I just stopped breathing and scared the crap out of my parents. Scared them to death. My mom was so scared. She was so sure. They both thought I looked blue and I wasn't breathing. And so they had a very interesting time getting my brothers to the neighbor's house and then riding in the ambulance. But I was okay. Do you get scared with tests they have to do, or if you get sick? Because I know some tests are uncomfortable or hurt, whether it's for Turner syndrome or not. The only ones I've had in Turner syndrome stuff that have made me nervous, or really any tests I've had that have made me nervous, is the cardiac MRIs. I've had 2 MRIs on my heart within the first one was when I was 21. She said that was the best time period to see anything, if anything was going to happen. And I'm talking about like the heart problem that happens. The aortic coarctation is how you say it. Basically means the aortic valve expanding, and that gets super dangerous. So she said an MRI is the best way to see that, and this is the best age to catch it if it's going to happen. So we did it then, and then when we were looking into IVF, I had another one just to confirm, and both have been fine, but I'm super claustrophobic, and I hate those machines. And yeah, so MRIs are the only one I've really had a problem with. All the others have been fine. I don't like needles, but I have great veins for it, so it doesn't really bother me. I just don't like them. Was it hard finding someone who understands what you're going through to spend the rest of your life with? When I was 16, I would have said yes, but not because of Turner syndrome, but because of the jerks that I was around. I wasn't around Andrew at that age. And then I met him, and no, it honestly, he has been amazing. I don't think anybody else really would be as much of a support for me as he is. He's always just been so amazing about all of it, about my medical stuff with it, about the infertility. He's just been amazing. So I am very, very lucky. And I think that's something that you really have to, you don't want to scare them off with how early you tell them. But I think, honestly, you have to be confident enough to not be afraid to share it. They shouldn't have their mind changed by that. If they do, they're not worth it anyways. They're not somebody you want to do that with anyways. And that's kind of a good tell for that. obviously you don't want to scare them, but it's not something you should feel like you have to downplay or hide or anything like that. So you just have to be honest and confident about it and know that that's just a part of them loving you, is understanding that. So, yeah, I got very lucky. Are panic attacks linked to TS? I don't think they're specifically linked to TS, but I know there's higher anxiety with TS that causes panic attacks. So it definitely wouldn't be strange because higher anxiety is going to lead to that. The right guy will love you for you no matter not whether you can have children. Yes. No, Bradley, I didn't miss your Friends reference. I saw it. He's the one that got me into Friends, if anybody cares to know. He's the reason I've watched every single episode. Those jerks got beat up. Andrew's the only one who passed the test. Well, Andrew had kind of a crash course into our family. I don't know how fun that was for him, but probably not. You're a medical marvel. Friends reference. Do you know any books about Turner syndrome? The only ones I've really heard of are others that I've heard of from other TS girls. So Andrea Horner has written one sharing her story. Most of the ones I've seen have been about their stories. And I think I've seen like one that gives advice to being in a relationship with a girl with TS, or like not relationship, but being in a friendship, or being the mom or a parent of a girl with TS, tips like that. And then, yeah, girls sharing their stories, which is really cool. And if you Google Turner syndrome books, that's a lot of what comes up. And Andrea Horner's book comes up. So that tells her story and everything. It's really cool. Andrew said, oh, the test. Oh, gosh. Is insomnia connected to TS? I mean, there are a lot of little things that are going to be affected by the hormone imbalance. So whenever your hormones are out of whack, there's so many of those things like anxiety. Anxiety for me is a big one. And sleep, that's all regulated by hormones. So if they're out of whack, it's going to be out of whack in some way, whether it's you're sleeping too much or not enough, you're too anxious, or all of those kind of things are going to be affected by it. So it's not connected in the sense that it's the main source of it, but it definitely would play into it. Absolutely. I mean, I would say it could contribute to that being an issue for you. Yeah. Sometimes I'm worried I won't find the right guy because a lot of them do want children and I can't have them, but there is always adoption. Okay, so infertility is the part of this that I've always been the most insecure about because it hits me on twofold. I, on my own personal side of it, wanted to be able to go through pregnancy and give birth and have kids. And I just love kids. I love kids. So I always knew I wanted to be a mom. Ask my brother. I mother everything. I don't have kids, but I still act like a mom. And that's just the way God made me. I've said that a lot, but it hit me really hard when I first realized what that was going to mean, like how much of a reality it really was, that wasn't going to happen on its own for me. And then there's the whole side of it of wanting to provide a kid for your spouse. I cannot tell you how much it would mean to me to be able to do IVF with egg donation and have Andrew still be able to have a biological child. It would mean everything to me. But I can only control that so much. And that's kind of why I told him as early as I did, because I knew just from me and him talking, we were together 2 months before I told him. And that was the main part of it. I was telling him, Bradley, no. I was basically telling him to break the subject of having kids, because I knew me and him really, really both wanted kids really badly. I knew that was something that was going to mean a lot to us. Like, not immediately, but I knew that was going to mean a ton to both of us, that we would both really care about that. And I didn't know how he would take it. And so I did it to break that topic, but he immediately started saying, there's always adoption. There's other ways. And he's been extremely supportive of everything that we've gone through, everything that we've tried, everything we've discussed and looked at. And yeah, so you will find a guy that is willing to accept it. If I plan to do the embryo adoption, does height have a role in being able to carry? I've never heard height talked about as far as saying you can carry. I know I'm not even 5 foot and I got cleared for IVF. The main thing they focus on is your heart health. That's why I had to have a cardiac MRI before they would clear me. They want your heart healthy enough to handle it, because pregnancy puts even more strain on your heart than normal. And so if you don't have a healthy heart to start with, it's going to make that even worse. And for us, like for me, my risk of having that heart problem and pregnancy being dangerous is like tenfold the normal. So they don't focus on height. They focus on your heart and how healthy your heart is in order to clear you. So they would probably just do a cardiac MRI. And I talked to an embryo adoption agency, and that was the main thing they said. And they had other girls with Turners come through there and have successful